name is Ara Topouzian. I'm the Executive Director for Michigan Venture Capital Association, and privileged really to be here today to talk to a fairly new board member of ours with a very significant role in the Michigan ecosystem. I'm with Matt Tsien. Matt is the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at GM Ventures. And Matt, welcome. It's great to talk to you today. We've certainly had some time to talk offline about this webinar, and I think this is going to be really interesting for folks, especially since I don't think we've ever really focused on corporate venture firms. So thanks for being on this program today.
Well, thank you, Ara. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
So before we delve into corporate venture capital and specifically the work that GM does, let's talk a little bit about your background and sort of how you came to General Motors and then now this specific role.
Certainly, be happy to do that. So Ara, I've been with General Motors my entire career. I actually started with General Motors right out of high school as a co-op student. So I went to GMI, which is now Kettering University, graduated from there with a degree in EE, and worked for over a decade really at one of General Motors divisions at the time called Delco Electronics. Eventually became part of Delphi and now part of Aptiv. But I've been with GM my entire career, have had wonderful experiences in engineering, product engineering, but I've also had a couple of stints in China. I've worked in Australia, worked in Germany, different functions as well, including product planning, general management. My most recent assignment before coming back to the United States in June of last year was the president of General Motors China, where I ran our China operation for about 6.5 years. And I'm currently, as you mentioned, I'm an executive vice president for General Motors, chief technology officer, as well as the president of GM Ventures. So Ventures is somewhat new to me, but a very, very exciting space.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to get into how you went from the roles that you had to now doing venture work. I mean, I think that is certainly quite interesting. And just as a reminder for all the attendees that are on today, we'll have some time to ask, some questions for you will have the ability to ask some questions here of Matt. So in the chat function, certainly send us your question and we'll hopefully get to as many, if not all those as possible. So Matt, let's delve into GM Ventures. Let's talk about sort of the beginnings of really this organization, the structure, its sort of makeup and when it was founded. Can you give us some history on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to do that. I'll give you a brief sketch. So GM Ventures celebrated our 10th anniversary last year. It was established in 2010. And when we were established, we were, if not the first, certainly among the first of the automotive OEMs to have established a dedicated venture operation, a venture arm, if you will. And we're structured as a limited liability company. GM Ventures is an LLC, as operating as a subsidiary of General Motors. We're funded initially by General Motors, and that's the source of our sort of investment funding. We have been focused primarily on technologies that can really help our business, not just the product side, but as well as the overall business and enterprise side of the business. And when we were originally structured, we were intentionally structured to be somewhat independent so that we can run very quickly and make decisions very quickly. So GM Ventures has an investment board, for example, right, that is comprised of key leaders inside our company, inside General Motors. But the investment board really has the empowerment and the authority to make investment decisions. And we can make those decisions very, very quickly.
So definitely a leg up on, I guess, normal venture capital firm. There's no fundraising on really your end. It's more of a budgeted line item of sorts, right?
Well, that is true. That doesn't mean that there's no accountability, but
no, of
clearly
course
the fundraising aspect of it, you're right, Ara. Yeah,
Yeah.
clearly, I think the fundraising aspect of it is less of a concern. And I think one of the advantages I think we have also as a corporate venture organization is, especially when it comes to technology and very novel technology, sometimes it takes experts to really assess the
Yeah.
significance and the relevance and the novelty of the technology. And because we have a very significant R&D organization, and GM Ventures and R&D organization are both really managed, and report to me that we're really able to leverage our R&D and our engineering experts to help us evaluate the merits of some of these companies that we're looking at. So when GM Ventures makes an investment, I think we make an investment perhaps with a little bit greater deal of confidence. And I think it really helps as well as we work with other partners in the venture community, because when GM makes an investment, I think it is a significant sign of endorsement,
Yeah,
for a particular company.
definitely. So let's talk about some of those investments. What, as far as stages of investment does GM Ventures look at?
Yeah, so typically we invest in companies that are probably fairly early stage. We try to avoid seed stage because the idea is a little bit too perhaps premature, and perhaps we don't really have enough yet to really go on. So our sweet spot is really sort of Series A, Series B is where we really sort of enter the picture. But when we make an investment, we tend to make an investment with a long view. So,
Right.
as long as things continue to progress, and we continue to see the synergies, we will continue to follow the rounds as they continue to develop.
Okay. And actually, we've got I think, a good question that just popped in, which is appropriate at this time, of how much capital are you seeking to invest each year at GM Ventures? Is there a range, and do you have a cap?
Yeah, there is a range that we work with. There's no absolute cap, So we typically invest when we look at an investment in the company. We typically look at check sizes probably in the $2 to $5 million range, if you will, for a given investment. And for any given year, we may make anywhere from a single investment to maybe half a dozen sort of investments. And of course, then there's the follow-on that we also do
Right.
with regard to our current portfolio companies. Yeah. So that's
Okay.
kind of the typical sort
Yeah.
of size, if you will, in the range of what we're looking at.
How about the success rates?
Success rate has been, I would say, generally speaking, has been good. Our track record
Yeah.
over 10 years has been, I think, very satisfactory. But as with all of our colleagues, I think in the venture community, this is a risky space. So we have had investments that have paid off very handsomely, especially recently with all the SPAC activity. Some of the companies we've invested in, have entered into SPAC transactions and are on their way to become public companies with pretty good returns. Others have been acquired along the way by other companies. Certainly, there's been a few, that have not been successful. So it's a mixed bag, but all in all, if we were to sort of take a look at the portfolio, it's been a pretty satisfactory return.
Yeah.
Overall.
And certainly there's some subtle differences, right? I mean, comparisons to let's say your, I'll just say non-corporate VC, but can you address some of those? I mean, what are some of the similarities or maybe some of the subtle differences between a corporate venture firm and, let's say, your traditional VC firm?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ara, because I think there are some significant
Yeah.
differences. First and foremost, we do view ourselves as more of a strategic investor
Yeah.
as opposed to sort of a pure financial investor. You already mentioned the fundraising aspect of it. We don't, for example, need to go and sort of, amass capital, if you will, or seek capital to form a fund. We are funded by the corporation. So that's one sort of key difference, if you will. At the same time, when we look at investing in a company, we're really looking for synergy. We're looking, obviously, for the company to be successful. I mean, we have to see promise. We have to see promise in the way of the novelty of what the company has to offer. We have to see the potential for the company to really scale exponentially, hopefully over time. And we have to see quality in the leadership and the management of the company. So it's not just a great idea, but a team that can really sort of bring that idea to life, could really make it a commercial reality. So we looked at all those aspects of it. But beyond that, we really look at the synergy with our business. In other words, does that novel technology or that novel product, is that going to give us a competitive advantage? Do we get a chance to be first to market with that novelty? And, is there a way that what this startup has to offer, is there a way for it to bring sort of true advantage, true competitive advantage to our business? Can it streamline our business? Can it improve our cybersecurity profile? Can it improve our manufacturing efficiency? Can it help us, do our logistics work a lot better, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times when we invest in a company, we're also looking perhaps in parallel, not with GM Ventures, with GM the corporation, to establish a commercial agreement with a startup. And the commercial agreement sort of brings together the fact that we have a business commitment now with a startup, which is, I think, a wonderful advantage for the startup because, again, the ability to work with GM with the kind of scale that we're able to offer, I think offers a sizable commercial opportunity as well as a really a sense of affirmation and credibility, if you will, that enables the startup to perhaps be able to seek business with other companies, either in our industry or in other industries.
Right.
And because of that, by the way, Ara, we also, really do not seek to take a majority position in the company because we'd like the company actually to be able to seek diverse customer bases. And by us being too heavily invested, sometimes it deters perhaps other companies from working with these startups.
Right. So when we talked offline, there are a number of areas of expertise that GM is focused on, and I know that we spent some time talking about that. Can you give us some more information on those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've just recently revamped sort of our investment focus areas, and there are really 4 areas that we're focusing on at the moment that's of great interest to us. One is the electrification ecosystem. I mean, General Motors has announced, that we are moving to a zero emissions future.
Right.
It's a very firm commitment. So in that sense, any technologies that's related to batteries, motors, power electronics, the charging infrastructure, sustainable design and materials are very, very interesting to us. So electrification ecosystem. Another area is really connecting the customer because we're looking at, really having a total vehicle experience that we're providing to the customers. So whether it's human machine interfaces, cloud services, voice interactions, those technologies are very interesting to us as well. The third area is autonomous. I mean, we are going through an autonomous revolution right now. With GM, we've launched technologies such as Super Cruise. We're going to continue to build on those autonomous kinds of experiences, those hands-free experiences, and bring maybe even more immersive and capable experiences to the customer. So anything that helps us to develop more autonomous capabilities for our products, but as well as our factories. Factories are getting smarter. So autonomous experiences that really help make our factories smarter. And then the last area is what we call digital enterprise. And that encompasses cybersecurity, 5G, artificial intelligence, machine learning, novel business solutions. It's a fairly broad and expansive area. So those are really the areas of investment focus, if you will, that we're really interested in.
These are all real important and non-surprising areas. So with all of that, let's talk a little bit about that startup environment. How does GM Ventures source the pipeline?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why we're part of the MVCA. That's part of the reason why we're also involved in many other venture associations. This is one thing that I've discovered anyway since entering the venture space, is that it is a very, very, I would say, open environment where companies and organizations are really, very free to share deal flows with each other, share insights, information, experiences, et cetera. And we very much enjoy being part of that ecosystem. We have shared our experiences with other corporate venture companies that are starting out, to help them understand perhaps some of the things that we've learned that perhaps they don't need to relearn. But similarly, I think we've learned from many others as well throughout the process. So sharing deal flows is, I think, is fairly commonplace within the within this particular community, something that we enjoy a lot. But we literally go through hundreds of potential prospects, and we get,
Yeah.
we have sources from many different areas, right? We have retirees, for example, that contact us,
Yeah.
because they happen to be involved in perhaps a startup that they thought would be relevant to us. Uh, so many different sources there.
Sure. So what are you looking for, as far as technologies? I mean, within the technologies, I mean, I'm assuming the more the innovative, the maybe the quicker, the scalable of business, I guess, and again, these would be um, similar traits that a traditional VC firm would have, but what's GM looking for?
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
thing.
So
Yeah.
we're looking for things that go beyond. Yeah, we're looking for things that go beyond the incremental. We're really looking for something that is truly novel, truly groundbreaking. The real big ideas, if you will, and they come in many different areas. To just give you sort of a couple of examples. I mean, one of the companies that we're invested in is focused on augmented reality HUDs. And we think that they have deep expertise in this area, and they're able to come up with augmented reality HUDs that work extremely well, but also are very packaging efficient. Um, and in the vehicle, package space is at a premium,
Right.
because you can have a great uh, feature, but if you can't package it effectively within the IP, you have perhaps some challenges in terms of how many places where you can really apply it. So here we found a company that is really, we believe, has a real lead in this particular area. Another example is in this whole space of additive manufacturing.
Mm.
The area of additive manufacturing has been emerging for a while, and the adage has always been sort of, you could either get real precision but
Mhm.
slow, or you can get speed, but then you don't have the precision.
Mm.
And we're working with a company that is really sort of breaking the mold in this area, getting both precision as well as speed at the same time. And
Right.
it's these kinds of really novel breakthrough
Yeah.
kinds of concepts and technologies that really attract us, if you will, and really tells us that, hey, there's something here. And, if we can make that work and we can make that business scale, uh, then this business is going to get really exciting.
Now, Matt, the automotive market is pretty competitive. How do you view
Yes.
these startups that you're working with? Is
Mm-hmm.
there exclusivity? I mean, if they're fortunate to get funding from GM Ventures, are they a GM for life, or do you allow them to sort of spread the wealth a bit?
Well, so it goes to the question of commercial agreements, and I think every situation is unique, and every situation
Right.
is different. We have some cases where, for example, we're the first to have discovered them, and they bring something very unique, and we look for a period of exclusivity. For example, we want to
Okay.
be first to market, and because of the fact that we were the first, we don't think we're actually hampering their business growth. In fact, we might be actually enhancing their business prospects by being first to market. But generally speaking, what we're really looking for is we're looking for a synergistic arrangement, right?
Mm.
Where what they bring to us can really give us a competitive advantage. But by us investing in this company, we also give them an opportunity perhaps to have a leg up on their competitors, by having us as a customer.
Right.
We hardly ever, actually, we don't have a case, where we say we have to be the exclusive customer, if you will. We want them to have the opportunity
Right.
to seek other customers. And for many of the technologies and many of the products, you know, by having a broader customer base, it helps everyone
Right.
because then they will have the scale. When they
Right.
achieve the scale benefits will basically accrue to sort of all the
Yeah.
players.
Another sort of question regarding sort of maybe the subtle differences. Are you taking board seats with these companies?
Yes, we have taken board seats. In depends on the size of the investment, I would say, Era,
Yeah.
and the specific negotiations. So we have some companies where we have taken board seats. We have many other companies where we have sought observation rights uh, on the board. Generally speaking, we would like to at least have an observation right within the company because for us, investing in these companies is a pretty significant commitment. It's not just a financial commitment, but it's also a commitment in the success of these companies. And we like to be able to stay close to the management. We like to be able to stay close to the board
Right.
and really help to have some influence, if you will, in guiding and steering and perhaps coaching, some of the small teams that are coming together with these startups.
Right.
So
Makes
having good visibility, I think, is very important,
Yeah,
and continued engagement.
definitely. All right, let's take some questions. They're coming in quite a bit, and one that seems to be a few of these have been kind of very similar. But do you invest outside of the auto industry?
Um, so yes, we do, because some of the investments we make uh, are in companies that go across industries. I mentioned, for example, cybersecurity is one of those. And the cybersecurity company that I'm thinking of, and I'm referring to in my example, is an industrial cybersecurity company.
Okay.
So they are involved not just in the auto space, but they're involved in across many, many different industries. And in the particular area that this particular company is addressing is really the fact that we have a lot of, in our plants, a lot of legacy equipment that might have been installed 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when factories are perhaps a little bit less networked. But nowadays, with factories getting smarter, we have a lot of these industrial devices that are increasingly networked,
Hmm.
right? So they can communicate information and controls and all that sort of stuff um, in a network fashion. However, because of the fact that these machines were installed back in those days without networking as basically the starting point, you end up with potential cybersecurity issues when you
Right.
begin to tie them all into a network. So this company actually comes in and puts basically the kind of cybersecurity protection that you need to make sure that you're securing your industrial assets in a network fashion. So it's a very unique sort of proposition, but it goes
Right.
across multiple industries.
Okay.
And we have others that are involved in logistics, for example, that we've invested in. They've helped us in terms of tracking our inbound and outbound logistics in a very efficient way.
Hmm.
But now they're looking at other verticals. They're looking at tracking assets in hospitals and
Mm.
healthcare institutions, for example. So clearly, these are companies that go beyond the auto industry. They didn't start with necessarily the auto industry in mind. Some of them did, but certainly are able to expand beyond that.
Right.
But I think one of the things, back to the original question, though, is that we are looking for companies that have some synergy to our business, whether it's our product or our business processes. So, for example, we would not invest in a healthcare company that where as promising as it might be, where
Right.
there's no sort of direct relationship in terms of how it might help our business.
Right. Which makes a lot of sense. Um, as
Yeah.
you evaluate potential investments, do you use the lens of the North American market, or do the technologies need to also meet requirements for Europe, overseas, and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's situational. I mean, we are a global company. Um, North America is certainly a very large and significant market for us. So, we're really looking for how much of an influence does this technology, could this technology potentially have? We have, when you look at our investment footprint, our footprint is largely focused around North America, but we have invested in companies that are overseas. We've invested in Israeli companies. We've invested in Chinese startups, et cetera, et cetera. Some of those is because their technologies are unique and applicable to us in our global markets. Some of them because they're applicable in their unique regional markets. So
Right.
it's very much dependent once again on how unique is that technology, and what kind of advantage can it bring to us?
Yeah.
Yeah, in various parts of our business.
Um, this is an interesting question, and this is probably more of just kind of asking for your expertise. What would you suggest for a professional with a finance business background? In other words, without any kind of technical experience, who may be interested in transitioning to a corporate venture capital career?
Mm. hmm That's an interesting question, and it's a good question, because when we look at our team within GM Ventures, we actually have a mix of talents, if you will,
Okay.
within our organization. We do have a number of very seasoned professionals who have grown up in General Motors, and they are, very, very well experienced in various disciplines. They happen to have come into GM Ventures because it's just an interesting space for them to be involved in, an opportunity for them to learn a very different sort of kind of business. But the advantage that they bring is they bring a tremendous network. They know everybody in
Right.
the company. They know where the experts are. They know where to find them. And when we vet these companies, these folks are extremely valuable to us in terms of their ability to find the right experts in the company, or to find the right sponsors in the company. Because many times when we're looking at investing in a company, we're also looking for sponsors inside our business that says,
Mm.
hey, this idea is really great, and I want to be able to adopt it, and I want to be able to use it. But there's another part of our ventures team that really are made up of these finance and business professionals, MBAs
Mhm.
who just recently graduated, or those that have maybe a couple of years, 3, 5 years in investment banking. So they're really coming from sort of that community. They probably understand the company a little bit less and our business a little bit less, but they bring a lot more analytical capabilities in
Right.
terms of being able to run the due diligence, being able to really understand cap tables and how they're formulated, working the contracts, working with working with term sheets, all of that. So we actually have a very interesting blend of talent within the
Yeah.
company. So yeah, clearly those that have business and finance backgrounds with an interest in venturing, I think clearly folks that we'd be interested in looking at.
I think you're going to get some resumes now after that comment, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, Matt, we have some folks that I know that are on this that represent economic development organizations, and certainly as they're going about doing attraction efforts and whatnot, they're always asking about, rightly so, sort of the relationship between public and private partnership. Um, do you have any collaborative ventures with state or federal government?
Yeah, not at the present time. When it comes to like an investment, if you will,
Yeah.
the way we have approached our investments in startups is that we tend to invest in companies. So we don't invest in funds, for example. Again, being a strategic investor, we're really looking for these unique companies, as opposed to looking at a portfolio where you invest in and you're looking sort of for that financial return. Financial return is important to us, but again,
Sure.
we're looking at individual companies, and in terms of what that company might be able to bring to the party. Uh, you know, when it comes to um, economic development or those kinds of opportunities, I mean, we recognize that, for example, in the state of Michigan, there's a real interest in cultivating a strong sort of community of entrepreneurs and startups. And we clearly value that. We endorse that. Some of the portfolio companies that we have invested in are Michigan-based companies. We're happy about that. We're proud of it. It's not the first criteria. It's the criteria is, does it have something really novel? Does it really have a very strong prospect for growth? And does it have synergy with what we're doing?
Right. Let's go back to a little bit as we're getting closer to wrapping up too. We've got a number of questions that really keep kind of popping in, which is excellent. And we'll again try to get to all of these, but let's talk about the portfolio companies again when you're looking at term sheets with them. Are there special terms that you put in there? I mean, as far as first right of refusal, or they have to be dedicated to GM for a certain period of time? Are there things that you put in those terms that might be different than what maybe the other, like a non-corporate VC firm would seek?
No, I wouldn't say so, Ara. I mean,
Okay.
our focus is, again, really on making sure that we're able to leverage effectively what the company has to offer. But we're very, very focused on enabling the company to really be able to grow successfully and freely. So we believe that, for example, in putting in term sheets things that are very restrictive, that keeps the company perhaps from being attractive to other customers or other investors, is not something that is going to be good for the future growth of the company. So generally speaking, we will put in, sort of our term sheets, the kind of things that protects our rights, as any investor, I think, would want to do, right? To make sure that your own rights are protected, but not to the point where you're necessarily restricting the freedom of the startup, or perhaps encumbering perhaps potential other investors or other customers from wanting to approach the company. Our focus very much really is on leveraging what the company has to offer, but at the same time, really providing the kind of support that we can provide to enable the company to be successful, to be more successful because of our investment.
Yeah.
One of the classic, I think, examples of where I think there's true synergy is one of the companies we've invested in, where I happen to be an observer on the board, and I was participating in its first board meetings this year, and they had 3 very clear goals, right? One of the goals was to deliver on a program, on a project that they're doing for us. So that's great. That's one of their 3 top goals, right?
Right.
The next goal is to deliver on this next gen, which are very important to us, this next gen product. And the third is to get 3 new customers, which I think is fantastic, right?
Right.
So, that is really just a really good example of when we know we've got the attention of this company, because they're really focused on our program. They're really focused on the future that means a lot to us.
Yeah.
But they're also focused on growing their business, right? Beyond,
Right.
which I think is wonderful.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So there's a question that's come in, if we focus on talent maybe for a quick second. Is GM seeing an influx in IT staff leaving to form their own companies? And what may be your viewpoint on this?
Well, the whole IT space is very, very vibrant.
Yeah.
We are, in fact, growing staff at General Motors. So, we announced late last year that, we're actually growing our engineering as well as our IT staff significantly, partly because of the transformation that we're going through as a total company. We're moving heavily towards electrification. We're also focused a lot on sort of other transformational business opportunities. We announced BrightDrop, for example, as a new business focus for us as a company, focused on commercial, emissions-free sort of transportation and logistics. So because of our portfolio and our needs, we are actually growing our staff significantly within the company. Now, is there attrition that goes on within this space? There is, within this particular space, because frankly, at this present time, I think engineering professionals, IT professionals are very much sought after in many, many different industries, right? Some of them do go to startups. Many go to other sort of industry verticals as well. So clearly, we need to do what we can to attract the best talent as well as to retain the best talent. We've been doing a pretty good job so far in doing that.
Yeah, definitely. How about innovations in just the whole corporate venture capital model? I mean, what are other corporations doing, that potentially you would bring into GM?
Yeah. So for us, the innovation that's brought in by startups really represents one of 3 pillars of innovation for us as a company. We have a very strong internal R&D capability and advanced engineering capability, and that's certainly a source of internal innovation in the company. I referred to that earlier because we have a lot of these experts who we ask to sort of vet the startups. While these guys aren't spending all their time waiting for startups to vet, they're off working on their own inventions. They're working on their own developments, et cetera, et cetera. We have another source of innovation really coming from a very extensive supply base. The auto industry in general works with a lot of really, really creative and capable suppliers in the industry. So we source a lot of innovation from our suppliers. They bring great ideas to us, and when those great ideas come, we try to get them into our vehicles and try to get a competitive advantage. But then the startup community, the startup space represents sort of this third pillar of innovation that until 10 years ago, when we formed GM Ventures, we never really tapped. And it was difficult to tap because GM is a large company and most of these startups are very small. They don't really even know how to approach a company like General Motors. And we don't exactly know how to work with them. We'll have a meeting and all of a sudden we'll start talking about our requirements. And to them, this is just all corporate speak. I don't understand what you guys are asking for.
Right.
It's too difficult. How come you're so process driven? So a lot of times I think what GM Ventures does is actually serves as a bridge, right? Because we need to work with the startups and sort of understand their language, but also then help them understand sort of what GM's language is all about and what do we really need and how do we get the two to work together. So, for us anyway, the ventures piece of it is a very important sort of third pillar of innovation for us that over the past 10 years, we've just found more and more value with. And I think many other, corporate VCs are beginning, the ones that are starting up are basically seeing the same kind of potential.
Right. This kind of leads into that last question I've got two last questions, but,
Okay.
where do you see the future going? You've kind of touched on that a little bit, but I mean, as far as GM Ventures, how do you feel about that?
It's going to get brighter and brighter. I think, some of the companies that are really, really coming into their own today are ones that we invested in 3-5 years ago. One of the things that we really recognize, I think, over probably the first decade is that we need to be selective. We need to look at a lot of companies, talk to a lot of potential startups. But once we sort of make an investment, we need to stay committed and we need to be patient because some of these technologies, they do take time to mature, right, to develop and, to sort of come into their own, if you will. So that's certainly, I think, a very important lesson learned. And I think as we get into the next decade, we will find that some of our earlier investments are going to, pay off very strongly. But at the same time, we're right now really working hard to find the kinds of companies that would bring us success, over the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. So going back to sort of our initial discussion about talking about your background.
Yeah.
And then you landed into venture.
Right.
How do you like it? I think I know the answer. I mean, certainly you're not going to say you don't like it. It really does sound like you like it. But I mean, this is really sort of a different path for you, given what you've done. I mean, how do you feel about all that?
I think it's just fascinating. I think it's very exciting. I think the ability to interact with many of these startups is just very, very exciting. You see that there's real talent out there. There's real passion. There's real energy out there. And the opportunity to really turn some of these startups into true successes, I think is very gratifying. But I think equally gratifying, if not more so, is by being able to leverage what they have and sort of help make General Motors even more successful. And one of the things that actually I've been trying to do internal to the company, since I came, is really make GM Ventures inside our company sort of less of a secret, if you will. I think when we first started off, I think it was almost a little bit of a secret inside the company. We didn't want too many people to know about GM Ventures. We wanted to be independent, be able to do our own thing. And what I'm really finding is that, we need to get the word out. We need to get the linkage, because if we get the linkage to the right into the organization, we'll be able to actually maximize the leverage that we can have with these companies. But at the same time, I still need to be protective of the original principles, which is to give GM Ventures enough independence so that we can actually act very decisively and very swiftly. So it's an interesting balancing act, but keeps the days exciting, Ara.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, thanks for joining today and talking to us. This and as well as some past offline conversations you and I have had, I've really had a better understanding of the work that you guys do. And um, I just want to thank you for your dedication, not only to Michigan, but the investment and the entrepreneurial community, and certainly, for the work that, you volunteered to do with us to be on the board. So thanks for doing this today. Thanks for everybody participating. If want some more information about Michigan Venture Capital Association, you can go online at michiganvca.org. And till then, we'll see you folks next time. Thanks again, Matt.
Well, thank you very much, Ara, and certainly very happy to be on the board of MVCA. And I think it's a great association, and certainly looking forward to future successes, future growth of this great organization.
Perfect. I wish I wrote that out for you, but I didn't. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, everybody have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. Bye now.
All right, bye-bye.